Hi everyone. Sorry for being a bit late. I had the wrong link, and I just noticed it came through in my files.
Hi, Melissa. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I tried to email, but my computer system or my email was not syncing up very well, so it took me some time to get the new link. So thank you for your patience.
No problem. No problem.
You want to kick off and do an introduction before we jump in? And again, thank you and sorry for being late. I was looking through the emails trying to find a new link, and then it came through.
Yeah, that's okay. I think we can start.
Okay, cool. Did you already do an introduction? Sorry, did you already do the introduction?
No, we haven't. We're waiting for the moderator. I think it's getting a bit late, but I think we should start.
Yeah, okay. All right, cool. Yeah. All right, good. So what I'll do first, it looks like we have a whole bunch of you on the call. I think I see about 18, 20, something like that. So thank you for waiting for me. I'm just going to adjust my calendar or my camera real quick. All right, good. So thank you for taking the time to join today, and I hope you won't be shy and ask questions throughout the presentation. I think it's a lot more fun when you ask questions, or if you might happen to not understand a word or not understand something that I'm saying, or just say, hey, I feel like that. That would be wonderful. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up my my presentation. So give me 1 second. And again, thank you for your patience in the email invite. I had the wrong link, so I was quickly trying to find the right link. So better late than never, right? So I'm going to start off, and I'm going to share a little bit about me and how I fit into the world. So my name is Melissa Sassi, and I wear a lot of different hats in the world. One of the things that you'll hear me talk a lot about today is being an and not an or. And what I mean by that is we all have a lot of either things that we're passionate about, things that we do, things that we like, and those things might be different for everyone. The things that I like or I'm good at are probably different than the things you like and are good at, or maybe we have some things that are the same. I will share some thoughts around all of those different hats. So for me, I work at IBM. So I work at one of the largest tech companies on the planet. And one of the things I focus on in that job is entrepreneur experience. And what that means is I run an accelerator. Within IBM, we have 45 startups in our program now from almost 20 different countries. So it's quite a global program. And if I look at, 3 of the startups that are in my program now, they either have teams in Pakistan, are from Pakistan, and or have their companies registered or got their sea legs in Pakistan. So for me, I'm very passionate about the startup ecosystem in Pakistan, and I think there are many opportunities for growth by incorporating the startup ecosystem in Pakistan into many of the things that the world does when it comes to bringing opportunities, when it comes to startups to life outside of Pakistan. And I know that there have been some very interesting funding announcements over the last even few weeks about new startups that are gaining access to capital. And that's really exciting for me because I remember being in Pakistan 3 times last year and, thinking about how there are so many wonderful ideas coming out of Pakistan specifically. And it's just really exciting. It's really exciting to see the growth and seeing Pakistan began to come on the stage when it comes to gaining access to new markets, or creating solutions that are relevant and appropriate for the Pakistani market. So whatever it is that you're thinking about doing, or you're already doing, there's such an opportunity in the country and beyond to launch your ideas. And there are many amazing accelerators and incubators that exist, whether that's through national programs like the National Incubation Centers, or university programs that you find at IBA, for example, and or really wonderful opportunities like what Circle Women is bringing to 100,000 women from across the country. And I'm also really excited to see that through programs like this, we're not just talking to people in the larger cities. We're looking at, or they're looking at, what's possible in rural communities around the world. There's a huge challenge with, what many rural communities call the brain drain, and that's, different people from rural communities feeling like they need to move to larger cities to gain access to opportunities or access to markets. Obviously the internet serves as a big, driver for that. As many of you who live in rural communities understand that, access to the internet is different in rural communities, or access to mentors might be different. But my firm belief is that with having access to the internet and having the digital skills to make meaningful use of the internet, you're able to jump beyond your rural community and tap into new and different experiences and people who you might not have had access to otherwise. I look at the 3 times I was in Pakistan, and I will tell you that whenever I come to Pakistan, I always feel like I'm coming home again. I want to thank all of you for making me feel welcome, and making me feel like Pakistan is my second home. I always enjoy my time there, and I won't tease any of you and tell you which biryani is my favorite, because I might make one city or one community mad over another, but I know exactly where my favorite biryani is. What we're going to talk about today is personal branding, and I've gotten to where I am in my career in many parts by creating my own personal brand, and making companies want to come to me and want to collaborate with me, but also being in charge of creating my own narrative. So what we'll talk about is how do you control your own narrative when you're not in the room. So how do you control what people say about you? How do people see you? How do they feel about you when you're not in the room? Sometimes I think about when I was younger, and I think about how I didn't really control my own narrative, and I probably didn't even know what I was all about. I probably didn't even know what my superpower was. We'll talk about how do you identify your superpower today, and we'll talk about my superpowers. In case you don't know what your superpowers are, this will hopefully be something to kickstart and get you feeling like you need to figure out, what is your secret sauce? What are you good at? What do you want to be known for? Who is the person you want to be? And also recognize that you're the only one stopping yourself from being whoever that person is, whatever that person is known for. Okay. So I mentioned that I am responsible for startup ecosystem at IBM, or the entrepreneur experience. I run the accelerator called IBM Hyper Protect Accelerator, where we empower early stage founders with access to cloud credits. So for those of you who are technical, and hopefully, since this is a tech woman thing, hopefully we have male allies with us, and also people who are very interested in technology, or maybe even those of you who are very competent in technology, whether that means you're an architect, a developer, or aspiring to be such. I believe that everyone should have digital skills, which leads us into the other role that I play at IBM. I also am responsible for student experience globally within my division. So again, let's see that as entrepreneur experience. So how do you make meaningful use of the internet by creating economic opportunity for yourself and for others? And then student experience, so that's whether you're a high school student, a university student, or a non-traditional student. How do you gain access to digital skills that will help you be prepared for the future of work? I don't just talk about technical skills when I talk about the future of work. I talk about soft skills as well. So as we talk about the two topics today, personal branding and imposter syndrome, or storytelling, and personal branding, storytelling, and imposter syndrome, these are really vital things to think about and things to incorporate into your personal and professional lives that are both or all about being prepared for the future of work, because it's not just about having tech skills. So for those of you who are developers, for example, it's not just about knowing a certain set of coding languages or being able to create tech stuff, whether that's a mobile application, an e-commerce solution, or a website, or whatever else you might be doing. It is the gamut of skills that enable you to go in and be future ready and get a job or create a job, depending upon where you'd like to go in your life. I as part of my student experience role, I also focus a lot on building entrepreneurial spirit. So for people who might not see themselves as an entrepreneur, how can I empower them to start to think of themselves like an entrepreneur? There was a very long time in my life where I was not an entrepreneur. I didn't think like an entrepreneur, and I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. And I now realize that I can be both an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur. For those of you who are not familiar with the word intrapreneur, it is someone who innovates within someone else's company. So for example, I am an intrapreneur inside of IBM. I kind of run my own business. I have my own little thing that I got going on, and I'm innovating inside of somebody else's company. So it's not my company, it's someone else's. And then, we are all hopefully familiar with what it is to be an entrepreneur, which is, it's your company. You are the founder, you are the CEO, you are the co-founder, right? So just remember that, even if you plan to be a founder one day and you're not yet, it's okay to, take on that job like I do and have your side shimmies like I do. But I know in different parts of the world, different people see, and different, leaders or bosses or company owners often see it as a conflict of interest. Like, oh gosh, Melissa can't clearly be, the, head of entrepreneur experience and student experience and be doing her own thing at the same time. My question is why? Why do we have to choose between working in someone else's company and also doing the other things that are very interesting for us? So hopefully the world will continue to evolve in this respect, and we'll see more people realize that they don't have to follow these artificial lines that people have set forth for us. If you get anything out of today's session, I want you to think about the concept of the one concept, and that's rules are someone else's opinion. Of course, I'm not telling you to go out and break laws and get in trouble and end up in jail. But remember that sometimes rules, they really are just someone else's opinion. And it doesn't necessarily mean you need to agree with that opinion. You'll hear about some of my superpowers. I also have a co-working space in North Africa, in Tunisia, so sandwiched in between Algeria and Libya, the spark of the Arab Spring. It's all youth-led and youth-run, and we've taught tens of thousands of young people to code in 12 countries. And it's just been a really, really exciting journey of teaching young people about computer science and helping them to see the power that computer science can have by providing them with real practical examples and real practical experience. I suspect that many of you have went through formal education or continuing to make your way through formal education. and even informal education. And I think one of the challenges, the greatest challenges of this time is that many of our educational systems are based on theoretical, learning. So you learn how to memorize stuff, and you got a lot of stuff memorized, but you finish school and you're like, what am I able to do? Have I gained, real practical, experience to help me go out and set myself apart from someone else and actually get a job? We'll talk a little bit about how you can do that. If we have time, I have a presentation that I'll pull up that talks about purpose-driven careers, and how you can incorporate purpose and passion into your job, and you don't have to choose between doing well, meaning having a salary, and doing good. So you don't have to choose between them. It's possible to, one, make the world a better place, and two, also gain a salary. Now, it's a journey, and it's not going to happen day one. And it may be that you have to split your, career into, multiple things where you're volunteering and, doing your regular job. But again, we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. I have two startups. Both are ed tech platforms for different audiences and different purposes. They haven't been launched yet, but I'm in the process of launching them and working on them, which is really exciting for me. Long time coming, and I wish I could say that I've launched already, but life gets in the way, and we don't always accomplish all of the things we want to accomplish within the time we want to accomplish them. So there you go. I'm the chair of the Digital Skills Working Group within IEEE, so the largest engineering organization on the planet, and I work on digital skills standards. So what does it mean to be digitally literate? Last week, we launched the first global definition and framework for what it means to be digitally literate, and it is my hope and my dream through my PhD research, which I'm in the process of defending my dissertation now. And that's all about the digital inclusion of underserved and underrepresented communities. So a lot of what I talk about, it combines kind of my academic world, my for-profit world. So again, wearing that IBM hat, my nonprofit world, which is my nonprofit, but I also sit on the board of a Pakistani nonprofit called Takmil. And we have about 30 schools around rural Pakistan where we teach out-of-school youth. And this is not about, youth who are not in school due to COVID-19. This is, long-term, young people who are, have left school or child laborers or might have other scenarios in their lives that have forced them to not continue with school, whether their parents didn't see the value, they didn't see the value, or they need to work to support the family. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. That said, I believe that with such a large population of out-of-school youth in Pakistan, what can we do to provide skills to those young people in an alternative fashion, through informal education, so that these young people who might be forced to work in the street or might be forced to take on jobs and tasks that might be very difficult for them in their lives. How do we empower them with the ability to read, to write, and to understand, math and some other basic subjects without being in school full time? All right, cool. So that's a little bit about me, or a whole lot about me, actually. I'm going to share my screen now. So let me just pull it up. And I'm going to open the chat window just in case anybody has anything to say. First off, I want to make sure that you can see my screen. So can someone just type in to the chat window whether you can see my personal branding screen or not?
Yeah, we can.
You can? Okay, cool. I'm gonna take off my video so I can save some bandwidth. My computer's been my connection's been a little bit wonky this weekend. I'll turn it back on again, but as I'm going through the presentation, I'm gonna turn it off so we don't lose some of my bandwidth. I hope that's okay. So, all right, cool. So we're gonna talk first about personal branding. And this is all about how do you control your own narrative in 5 easy steps. So I've already introduced myself. For those of you who are on Twitter, you can find me at Mentor Africa with a K. I'm going to type it in the chat window. So in case any of you would like to be connected on Twitter, you can find me there. I'm quite active, enter at your own risk, because I do share things that are, also of a personal nature in my life. So I don't believe in kind of having only one voice, and I bring my whole self, when I'm engaging through social media or other things. So I don't just look at it as, how can I talk about digital inclusion or women and girls or, entrepreneurship, but I bring my whole self. So you'll see my dog and all kinds of fun stuff, hopefully. So I first off want to thank Sadaf and her team from She Loves Tech Pakistan. For me, empowering women and girls through entrepreneurship and also technology are two pieces of my life that are very, very important and critical to my existence, really. And as we talk about what it means to create a personal brand, I think you'll see that hopefully when if you haven't already heard of me, or if we haven't already been on talks together before, you'll get a good idea of my personal brand, which will hopefully either empower you or provide you with or inspire you, or maybe even provide you with examples of how you can create your own personal brand. So first off, as I mentioned, we have the ability to control how others see us and how they describe us when we're not in the room. Yes, we do. We have control over that. We have the ability to decide how others talk about us, which seems kind of, interesting for me now, because I didn't think about this so much previously. And, I didn't realize that it's, when I was engaging in social media previously, years ago, I kind of saw it as me and my family and my friends. And I realized that it could actually be a powerful tool for getting others to see me the way I wanted to be seen, so that I could go into that next job that I want to go in and have people see me as an expert in certain capacities. So first thing that you need to think about when it comes to crafting your own personal brand is to think about what your superpower is. What is your secret weapon? So I'd like you to take a minute, and I'd like you to go to Google or Bing or whatever you prefer, and I'd like you to Google yourself. So Google your first name and your last name. And I'm going to pause for a second while I hope everyone does this. And what I'm going to do is, while you're doing that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to Google myself so that you're kind of flowing along with me. So you'll notice I'll bring my screen up in a second. So while I'm waiting to reshare my screen, does anyone want to share what they found about themselves? Like, if you had to describe yourself based on the first page of Google, did you find yourself? Did anybody find themselves?
Yes, I did.
And if you were someone else who didn't know you, what would you say based on what you saw? Like, would you be able to talk about your skills or your interests, or what would you be able to say, or what would you say, or is there enough there for you to talk about yourself?
Just a snippet from a workshop that I participated in a few years ago, and it has my age, my name, and my ambitions on it.
Okay, cool. So in terms of your ambitions, someone could look at that and be like, oh, okay, this person likes to do this, this, and this. Is it accurate based on today, or is it something that was like
No,
3 years ago?
It's a little outdated. It has changed now.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got some work to do on your personal brand, right?
Yes.
That's okay. That's okay. Now I'm going to reshare my screen. Does anybody else want to share what they found, or did any of you not find yourself? It's okay if you're shy. No worries. I'm going to just share my screen again, and I'm going to show myself. And I'm not doing this to be like arrogant or, wow, look at me. I'm all over Google. So, all right, you see my Twitter handle. All right, so you see some fun stuff. You also see like something about IBM. You see something here about the future of work. You see something about accelerators, so you think, oh, and you see something from Microsoft for startups, so you think, okay, like future of work, startup stuff. You kind of come down here and you see something about internet and connected communities, so you see something about digital inclusion. You can watch a couple of videos, right? That's all me. You come over to the second page, you see some stuff about, oh, that's from Pakistan. There you go. So you see just a lot of stuff on technology and entrepreneurship, right? So I'm going to go back to my presentation now. Give me 1 second. All right, I'm going to go back into presentation mode. So think about this. If you were to Google yourself in a year, and if you're not shy, and I know some of you might be, what are the 3 things you'd want people to know about you if they were to Google you? So for the same person, and I couldn't tell who was talking just now, but what were your aspirations at that time from that thing 3 years ago? What did you want to do?
I wanted to become a cancer researcher,
Okay.
but now
So 3
I
years,
switched.
and then you switched. What are you doing now, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, I'm currently pursuing a degree in psychology, so I want to be known for an advocate of mental health in Pakistan.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Do you plan to incorporate technology into that in some way, or what do you think the tie between what
Yeah,
you're doing with mental health and technology might be?
yeah. So in a way that maybe I can provide online counseling to those who don't have access to actual therapists, free of
Yeah,
cost online counseling.
yeah, that's a real thing. Is there a stigma in Pakistan about going to see a mental health professional, and
Yeah,
what
yes.
does that mean for you? And is there something wrong with you? And are you crazy, or are you okay? I
Yeah,
imagine that's what I
that's
heard.
rampant.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I was at a talk once, and a guy came up to me. Actually, he reached out to me before the talk, and he shared with me a bit about some of the mental health challenges that he had. And it was the first time that I'd ever had anyone in Pakistan, openly share some of their mental health challenges with me. And I asked him that same question as someone who lives with, these challenges, do you feel like it's hard for people to understand, or do you feel like you have access to the care that you need? And one of the things he commented on was it's really hard to get access to care. And then the other thing he mentioned was that the stigma that it might have, and one of his goals was very similar to yours, is I'd like to change that stigma of people feeling like it's okay to not be okay sometimes, or even every
Yes,
day, and it's okay
exactly.
to reach out for assistance, and it doesn't define you, and you can still be the person you want to be without whatever that stigma is. I spent a lot of time in also in the Arab world, and it's very similar. My son, actually, who is 16, he struggles with depression sometimes, and he will talk to me about it, because he knows in the community where he lives, it is very, very hard, because my kids live in Tunisia, which we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And so for him, it's really hard to, convince the family that it's okay for him to go talk to somebody, because they feel like if he does, it will create a label for him or a label for others. And they're terrified of him having a label versus realizing that, hey, having a struggle with, mental health is like having a broken arm. It's just, you can't, see it, you know, it's something you feel, and it's something that's hard to make others understand who don't suffer from something like this. So what we'll talk about is, for your particular situation, how do you transition from, Googling your name and finding out that, wait a second, this is talking about cancer research. That's not what I want to do anymore, to, kind of crafting your own personal brand. But I think the biggest thing is, and what was your name again? If you don't mind sharing, it's okay if you
Manahil.
Manahil, did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, one cool thing is Manahil has identified, what does she want to be known for, and are any others who are on the line? Like, do you know what you want to be known for? If you do, don't be shy. Feel free to share it in the chat window, because it makes it a lot more interactive if I can provide, real examples based on what do you want to be known for. It's really important to think about your strengths as well. So, obviously I'd love to be known as like a rock star and a poet and an artist, but I'm not an artist. I'm not a poet. I'm not a rock star. Maybe in some respects, maybe in some respects, I'm a rock star. Some of you may not have found yourself in Google. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can make that happen. Some of you might think about, wow, I want to be a public speaker, or I want to be a storyteller. How can I do that? Or I want to be known for that. So, as you're thinking about building your personal brand, again, first thing is know what you want to be known for. Okay. So if you want to be known as a storyteller, what are the 3 things that you can do to establish a personal brand around that? I will talk about that. Or what are the 3 things that you can do to be known as a public speaker? Or what are the 3 things that you can do to start to be found on Google and other places? And we'll also talk about how this has impacted my life, and we'll talk about how I see it impacting the lives of others. Okay, but I think ultimately, both online and offline, you want to be you. There's this saying where people say, be yourself. Everyone else is taken. It's really important that you be authentic. You be transparent, and be the person who you actually are. How many times have we, even as young people, kind of like told a story or told a lie, and it's really, it weighs on your shoulders, and you realize, like, you, for those people who do, kind of try to be someone else that are not authentic, we see that. How often is it that you meet someone, and there's something about them where you feel like they've got a shell around them and you don't really know them. Be authentic, be yourself, and unapologetically so. There are many things that make us different from one another. That's okay. We don't always have to fit in. We don't always have to be the same as everybody else. We don't always have to think the same as everyone else or do the same things that everyone else does. And this is the same for your careers, because I know that, in many parts of the world, Pakistan included, you have a lot of pressure from, family or your aunties or your friends, especially when it comes to being an entrepreneur, and I think women have an exponentially harder, role to play there, because of some of the expectations that you might have around, family, and what does it mean to be a wife? What does it mean to be a mother? And is it possible to balance, career with motherhood and being a wife? And it starts with all of us. It's not just about, females changing their mindsets. It's also about our allies recognizing that we all have personal dreams, and being independent while still achieving our kind of community goals, you know, whether that's being a mother, being a wife, whatever, we can be both of these things at the same time. Once you've figured out, you know, kind of what your secret sauce is, or what is that thing that you want to be known for, think about who your audience is and think about who's listening. You know, so I'm active in Twitter, in Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Those are the channels that I support. We'll talk about what you can do with your own website in a second, because there's a lot of ways that you can create your own content. And if you don't have tech skills to create your own website, there's a lot of things that you can do through LinkedIn by blogging and writing your own articles, you know, sharing your own original content. Those are the best ways of being seen as the person that you want to be seen as, is writing about that, you know, writing about, you know, for those of you who might want to be a storyteller or a speaker, you know, start to think about what is it that makes you a good speaker? What is it that makes you a good storyteller? And how can you empower others with those very skills? You know, for those of you who might, you know, be a software developer, or, you know, what can you do to showcase your work? You know, how can you create your own website to highlight the things that you've done? And if you've only done things that are theoretical in nature, where you said, you know, you started to learn about things, what are some things you can do to practice some of those skills? But ultimately, you know, it's important to just speak. You know, you're not going to apply the same language everywhere you go with everyone. You know, adjust as you see fit. The way I talk in Instagram is very different than the way I talk in LinkedIn. That's okay. Either way, be your authentic self, and don't be afraid to, you know, to be vulnerable. Tell relevant stories. You know, either way, share and write. So the best way to establish a personal brand is to have your own blog, to be active talking about the topics that are interesting to you, you know, and it could start out by just looking at research and reading articles and sharing your thoughts on what those articles might be, someone else's work, you know, until you feel comfortable starting to write your own original work. You know, either way, act with empathy. We know there's a lot of craziness online, and you will find people who are not so supportive of you or your ideas, or you'll find people who just want to be nasty. You know, figure out how do you, you know, for me, I block anyone who is not respectful, you know, with me. I respect different, you know, beliefs and different ways of looking at things, but if people are not acting with empathy, I block that out of my view. But either way, be prepared to teach and inspire others. You know, most importantly, just be. I tell this story about how I'm not an artist. I'm not, you know, I'm not good at like painting and stuff like that. And when I was a kid, I entered into this contest. It was a coloring contest, and we were all supposed to color this bunny rabbit, and it was for a holiday here in the U.S. And I colored this bunny, and I made all these different colors, and I got like little piece of cotton, and I put it on the bunny, and I turned it in. I was like in third grade, you know, so that's like young, right? And I got a call not too long afterward that I won the coloring contest, and they gave me $50. And, you know, based on being, you know, in the third grade, $50 for me was a lot of money. And I went and I bought candies and games at this store. That was what I got, was a $50 credit for this store. And I got all my stuff. And at the end, I was like, how many kids entered into the contest? And she goes, well, you were the only one. And, you know, I may not be the best artist out there, but because I showed up, I was the best. So just remember that, you know, it's not always like a competition. Sometimes we're competing with ourselves, you know, and you don't always have to be the best at everything. Sometimes you just have to show up. So when you're showing up, you know, be there and be consistent. You know, take part in social media and create content. Take part in events like this. You know, speak out, create relationships with others. And I know now we're doing things online, so the ability to truly interact with others has changed a lot. But being present is incredibly important. As you think about building the content, even if it's just a few words, you know, in whatever social media platforms you feel comfortable engaging in, you know, be useful and stick to that message. So, for those of you who might want to be a storyteller or a public speaker, what can you do to create some tips for others to learn about public speaking? What can you do to create some videos that talk about how do you tell good stories? And it could be that you read a book and you share the 5 things that you learned from that book, or you read a paper, an article. What are the 5 things, the 3 things that you learned from that article? So that somebody else who didn't read that book can take your knowledge and you can share it in a snackable, easy checklist or format. So there are many, many ways that we can repackage the work of others. I would say that it's always important to, cite your resources so that if you did learn something from someone else, you cite where you got it from. And, I think people see others, even if you're sharing, someone else's content as a leader, because you've taken it, you've dissected it, you've picked out what's important, and you've summarized it for someone else. But again, I haven't created my own website yet. I have the URL, but I haven't done it. I keep meaning to. I do a lot of blogging through IBM and a variety of other, channels. And a lot of the talks that I now get invited to do is because I built my brand, is because I started talking about these topics online, where I talked about them so much that people started seeing me as a leader in this space, because I talk about the same things frequently and I provide new insights and new examples until, they see that, wow, okay, yeah, this is a person who knows about digital inclusion, or this is a person who knows how to tell stories, or whatever. Identify your industry peers and engage with them. So who is it who's doing this right? So if you think about mental health, who else is doing mental health stuff, whether that's in Pakistan or beyond? How can you learn from them? How can you identify with them? How can you identify, speaking engagements where, others are speaking? If you don't feel comfortable, or you're not ready to be on the stage yet, so that you can learn from those individuals. Network, don't just talk about it. How many times do we meet a new person and we don't follow up? Especially when it's someone who could actually help us, personally and professionally. But don't just be thinking about how can you get what you need from others. Lend a helping hand. Be there when others need you, just as much as you, want others to be there for you when you need help. I call it, being a friend, and you can be a friend, in a professional setting as well. You want to focus on building unique emotional connections, even online. You don't have to have an online, or you don't have to have an in-person relationship to develop, emotional connections. And that often comes from empowering others to share their stories, giving them the space and time to share their story. So, one of the things that, if I were sitting, in a room with all of you, I would say, hey, why are you here? So maybe if you don't feel comfortable sharing it in public, maybe you could come back to me privately through the chat and tell me, why are you here at this session today? And I'm going to pause for a second while a few of you share, why are you here? Do you have a powerful story that has brought you to think about, why you want to gain access to new skills and why you're taking part in today's session? So I'm going to pause for a second because I want some of you to tell me. And it's going to be really boring if none of you reach out to me, because that means we're going to just sit here being quiet. Come on, there are 23 of you. Why are you here today? Everyone is feeling shy to tell me, or no? Does anyone want to share publicly why you're here today? Oh, yay, I got one. Cool. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but what I will tell you is I'll do a summary. So it sounds like some of you are here to explore new ideas, maybe to meet new people, and maybe to see things from someone else's point of view. So my point of view, right? And some stuff that I may share, you may you think, oh, that's not for me, that's okay. I think that's, it's important for us to have, critical thinking and to think about what's right for us and apply that appropriately. And it sounds like some of you are here to get inspired, and really figure out, how personal branding and storytelling, can be put into practice in your lives. I will actually tell you a story today. I've taken the lens of, personal branding and kind of correlating that to storytelling versus making this a storytelling one-on-one session. And I'll tell you a story about how I got inspired to do the work that I do. After I get through these steps, then I'll walk you through my personal journey so you can see a real life example. But ultimately, the biggest piece of storytelling is getting others to feel something. But also empowering yourself to listen to their story. Getting others to share their own stories, identifying what connects you with your audience, and enabling your audience to shine. And I know that sounds interesting when you say, wow, wait a second, I'm building a personal brand, but I'm empowering others to shine. What do you mean? Emotionally connecting with others. If you share your story and if you're authentic, it's contagious. And if you're vulnerable, it doesn't mean you're weak. It can actually serve as your strength. Enable other people's vulnerabilities to shine. Enable others to feel comfortable being vulnerable and saying, you know what, I don't know the answer to this. Or, wow, this thing, it happened to me, and here's what I'm doing about it. So I'm going to talk about step one. How did I find my superpower? And how do I own it? So for me, I turned my worst nightmare into my superpower. My children and I are victims of parental kidnapping. So 13 years ago, my children were kidnapped, and they were kidnapped by their father, actually. My kids, they're safe, they're healthy, they're normal, adjusted kids. However, I never got them back. And, I'm not going to complain about, the corruption and bureaucracy and all of these things that, served as really challenging pieces in my life that, did not allow me to get my children back. And I decided that I would play the long game with my children. So instead of saying, oh, poor sad me, my kids got kidnapped, now I can do nothing, now I'm a loser, or could I have done things differently, or should I have handled it differently, or should I have made different decisions? Whatever happened, it happened already. And that's the role I decided to play. And one day, about 5 years ago, my daughter told me, now just as background, I also used to work at Microsoft. I spent 5 years at Microsoft as an impact investor. And one day my daughter said to me, Mommy, I'm learning Microsoft. That's her accent. And I'm like, what do you mean you're learning Microsoft? And I realized that she was learning Word in her classroom. And I realized that she was learning Word in her classroom without access to her own device. Now, we see that often in many, many schools, not just in Tunisia, not just in Pakistan, but all over the world. And I thought, wow, as a technologist, I know that it will be very impossible for her to really be the person she wants to be professionally without access to digital skills, devices and the internet. So I thought, I can't change the world, but I can try to change this classroom. So in my role at Microsoft, I tried to identify ways that I could bring technology into her classroom, and it started there. I went from her saying, Mommy, I'm learning Microsoft, to bringing 400 laptops to 20 schools, identifying that the world doesn't have a standard for what it means to be digitally literate, and ended up creating a digital skills movement that all came from one conversation. My daughter saying, Mommy, I'm learning Microsoft. And realizing that my daughter didn't realize that she could be an engineer. She could be anything she wanted to be. And So I set out on this mission to empower many people from around the world, including women and girls, in technology, and switched my career completely into one that's all about social good, education, empowering women and girls, and tech. And this is how I found my superpower. And so hopefully when I told you that story, you know, it brought out some emotion in you. And maybe when I told that story, it made you think about, you know, wow, what if this happened to me? Or what would I do if I were in this situation? Or wow, that inspired me because, you know, this person found a way of taking any woman, any mother's worst nightmare and making it be something that was beyond herself, beyond anything. You know, for me, I realized that by doing this work, it enabled me to think about other, you know, something else. Like instead of feeling sad about my situation, it gave me something to focus on and something that the world needed. I didn't set out to change the world initially. I didn't set out to be a founder. I just want to get computers in my kids' classroom until I realized that, you know, if not me, who? If not now, when? And so here I am today, after 5 years, devoting my life to digital inclusion and making meaningful use of the internet. And I found by telling my personal story and writing about my story and really showing up and being there and being passionate about this topic, it was contagious. And other people wanted to include me in talks. I wasn't as great a public speaker as I am now. I obviously still have lots to learn, and we all have lots to learn when it comes to telling stories and speaking publicly. But you know, now I can tell stories on a stage, and I do that because I'm vulnerable, I'm authentic. I think about inspiring, I think about empowering, but I leave space for others. And I ask others, you know, what is it that you know, inspires you? What is it that makes you want to wake up in the morning and do your work? What does success look like for you? You know, what success may look like for me or might be different than what it might look like for you. I then kind of think about who is my audience and who's listening. So I work with heads of state, ministers, UN officials, students, all kinds of people. And the way that I talk to a head of state might be very different than the way I talk to a young student. But overall, my lens is the same. I'm authentic, so I'm me. I'm unapologetically me. And that means that I am not sorry about the things that make me quirky or different or weird, because sometimes we're all weird and sometimes we're all different. And sometimes we don't say the right thing or do the right thing. I pride myself on being very transparent, approachable, and I tell emotionally relevant stories. I incorporate my story at the right time with the right audience. But you can tell that even though I told you a very vulnerable story, I think you can still feel that I'm strong and confident. Now, previously, when I first started telling this story, I couldn't tell it without my voice shaking. But over time, now I can because I've practiced. But I also work hard on sharing my skills forward and volunteering. So when I think about how do I want to be seen, what do I want to be known for? A lot of what I have, gained in terms of my personal brand and being seen in a certain way is because of volunteering, of recognizing who's working on this important topic and how can I volunteer to help them, which in turn helps me. And that's not why I volunteer, but it's kind of this great double impact. You get experience, real practical experience, and it helps you to build your personal brand and helps you to build experience. But overarchingly, empathy is always key for me. And you can see here on the screen, there in the far left, the guy with the mask, that's the prime minister of a small island state off of Africa called Cape Verde or Cabo Verde. And this is him talking about one of my camps. In the middle, the larger kind of quote or online thing where it talks about brainstorming online education. This is where the UN called me the chief penguin of IBMC. Over time, you can craft how other people talk about you. I didn't read this article before it launched. They called me the chief penguin without me asking them to. And you can see a story that IBM told, 8 million followers, talking about what do I see as the future of the startup ecosystem in Pakistan. And again, I give my whole self. And I try to share my skills forward often. And that's what led to the cultural attaché of Tunisia, of the US Embassy in Tunisia, writing this to me. We were interviewing high school girls for our Tech Women Exchange program today. And when I asked one who she thought the most inspirational woman in tech in the world is, she said you. It's not the first time your name has come up in interviews as a favorite woman leader. I also asked the question about women role models for a young women's leadership program we interviewed for a few months ago. You've made such an impact on the lives of young Tunisians. Now, one would think that because my ex-husband, who's Tunisian, kidnapped my kids, took them to Tunisia, all of a sudden I would hate Tunisia, which is what many people ask me is, Tunisians often ask me, why don't you hate us? Like, look what we've done to your life. And I say, you haven't done this to my life. One person has done this to my life. And just because there's one bad person who may have done this, it doesn't mean everyone, has done this to me. I've had, someone also say to me, wow, those Muslims are like that, right? I'm like, actually, no. Just because you have one person who might have a specific faith that might be different than yours, it's unfair to assume that, one is connected to the other. And I think that there's a lot that we often need to do to, share our skills forward. And sometimes it can be very controversial. I also don't believe that because his religion might be different than what others might believe, that has anything to do with it. And so sometimes these conversations can get very emotional and very heated. I always try to be the best person that I can, but also being, staying true to my values and not letting anyone, capitalize upon the goodness that's coming out of the work that I'm trying to do. And we're always going to have haters, right? Like, how many times are we online and sometimes, people say nasty things or think nasty things or give us the evil eye when we're doing great things, right? So step 3 is be there, be there and be consistent, always show up. So see, I've done a lot of different things. This is just a small subset of the things that I do, but I spoke at 52 events in 10 countries last year. And now I know we're not traveling, and for many of us, we don't have the luxury of being able to travel even if we wanted to. I didn't start out my career getting invited to 52 events in 10 countries. That came from following this methodology of building my personal brand. And now I impact at least 20,000 people every year with my talks. I've already shared, a few places where I'm active, and most of this has come from being, building my personal brand online and offline, and, talking about digital inclusion, entrepreneurship, startups, youth empowerment, gender inclusion, but also allowing people to see my personal side, so that they see the whole me. Again, I blog, but I need to get my own personal website, up and running. It's something I'm planning to do next year, and hopefully I'll do that. So, it's a wonderful place for you to craft your own content, share your own content, because it's not dependent upon anybody else. You don't need anybody else's permission to do this. But ultimately, I strive for meaningful and lasting relationships and connections with industry peers. I don't compare myself to them. I elevate them. You know, I set goals to meet new people, I follow up, and I really try to figure out what's that common ground. How can I learn from them? How can they learn from me? How can I advocate for them? How can they advocate for me? How can I sponsor them? How can they sponsor me? How can I mentor them? How can they mentor me? How can I establish reverse mentoring? You know, reverse mentoring is, for me, bringing young people in to help me think about when I'm working with, young leaders, or I'm working on a program with young students. How can I think like a student? By having a reverse mentor relationship, where instead of me getting mentored by someone significantly older than me or significantly more experienced than me, I'm working with someone who's half my age. One of my mentors, she's 15, no, she's 16 now. She's 16 years old. And I believe that mentorship comes in all places. So I'm going to walk you through some of these photos here. This is me here, where I'm wearing the red dress. I memorized an opening statement for a startup talk with Jihan Ara and Arzish and 3 Pakistani entrepreneurs. And I did it in Urdu. I don't speak Urdu, but I memorized and practiced and practiced and practiced until I could do the opening statement in Urdu. And why did I do this? As a shout out to my startups in Pakistan, saying, hey, you come into my world, how can I come into yours? How can I do things that resonate with you? And it was big and bold. What do I know about speaking in Urdu? This is me when I met former President Bill Clinton. It was really cool because I was wearing an IBM shirt and I was first in line to meet him. I was picked out of 10 or 20 people to go and meet him. And they put me first in line. And I went up and I said, look at me in my IBM t-shirt and first in line. And he said, Melissa, may you always be first. It was really, really cool. This picture up here on the top left, that's Maylin Fung. She's one of my mentors. She created customer relationship management at Oracle in a basement. And I don't know if you know the singer Erykah Badu, but she is quite famous around the world. More like she had quite a lot of kind of hits back when I was younger, so she may not be someone you know, but she's a really cool artist. This is the father of the internet over here in the top right, second one from the right. That's the father of the internet. And I was on a panel with the father of the internet. This over here in the middle bottom right, he used to be the second in command at UNESCO, and he's now the Minister of Transportation in Tunisia. One of my friends, and someone who I met professionally, who became a friend personally, and we advocate for one another. This is the Secretary of State from Cape Verde, a small island state. His boss is the Prime Minister. And this happened because I just kept showing up and volunteering and doing good work and trying to empower the people of the country. And word got to the Secretary of State and he asked to meet me. Yeah. So step 5, build unique, emotionally connected relationships. So figure out what it is that can help you to establish an emotional connection with others. And that's all about empathy, empowering others to tell their stories, finding ways of, finding common ground. How can you inspire others to shine in their own way? Encouraging everyone to be authentic. So you've heard that I've talked a lot about, how can I encourage you to be authentic? I'm doing that right now. I'm sharing with you that, hey, be yourself, be authentic. It's contagious and it's welcome. I know it's scary sometimes, but be vulnerable. Share your thoughts openly. Don't be afraid. Again, you can find me on Twitter at Mentor Africa with a K. I would like to pause and find out if anyone has any questions. So I'm going to pause for a couple of minutes while I wait to see if you have any questions. And I will share these presentations at the end. I don't think I shared it with the last one, so I'll create a slide share and put these out there. So again, we're going to pause to see if anybody has any questions. And I'm going to wait 2 minutes because I'd like to see at least 2 people ask a question. Because remember, part of creating your personal brand is not being afraid to speak up and ask questions and, be present. And part of being present is taking part in the conversation. So what about my friends at Circle? Any questions from your side? If not, I'm gonna make you ask me a question. No questions. All right, we've got a quiet bunch today. All right, cool. How is this presentation so far, though? Is it interesting? Are you learning things? Are you getting what you wanted to get out of this presentation? You can also, message me privately too, and I'm not gonna, share your names if you're too shy, because that's okay. All right, cool. So it's not boring, it's interesting, it's engaging. All right, cool, awesome. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, and then I'm gonna bring up another presentation on imposter syndrome. Okay. Can you tell me if you can see one slide or two slides on the screen? If you could use the chat window to let me know. I want to make sure that it's coming through correctly. One slide? Okay, awesome. Sometimes PowerPoint does some weird things, and I have this one in PowerPoint instead of Canva. So we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. How many of you suffer from imposter syndrome, or does anyone know what imposter syndrome is?
I guess imposter syndrome is like when you're afraid to present something, like afraid to present presentation, anxiety during presentations, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. It can manifest itself in many ways. Like it can make you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't belong. What am I doing here? I'm an imposter. And I'm not a thought leader, or I don't have good things to think about, or my ideas are not any good, and I'm not. I'm an imposter. I'm faking it, and I don't really have an opportunity. I don't really belong here. We've all felt like that sometimes, especially like, think about it in a school setting, when you're around a bunch of people who like know what's going on, and you're like, I have no idea, because not everybody's good in, math or science or English or whatever the topic is. You're always going to find people who are, you're always going to find people who are better than you or more skilled than you, or you think, wow, I'm afraid I'm going to lose this thing because I'm not as good, or I'm not as good as I should be. But I'm here to tell you, so ask yourself one thing. Was there a huge mistake? Did I get to where I am by accident? Like, has that ever went through your mind before, where you achieve something or you get somewhere and you look around, you're like, how the heck did I get here? Like, this must have been an accident.
Yes, all the time.
I know, right? Or like, but I'm here to tell you that you're not succeeding by accident. This is my friend. She lives in Dubai, and we work together. And she said to me sometimes I don't know how I got to where I am. Like, I don't feel like I always belong. Like, everybody I work with are men, and all my clients are men, And, you know, sometimes like they want to talk to my boss instead of me, who's a man. And, you know, they just feel like they need to hear it from him instead of me. And how do you deal with that? You know, did I get here by accident? You know, and am I really as competent as him? And what is it about him that's different than me? You know, and I've said, you know, sometimes you just have to own your seat at the table and get rid of whatever that thing is in your mind. And, you know, sometimes, you know, be that persona that you want to be, and don't let yourself have a lot of doubts. This is my mentor, one of them. I have many. This is Susan Betts. Susan is is the head of brand strategy at Google, and she also was the head of brand strategy at Microsoft. And you know, she laughs, just like when my friend Donna Sakar, I really got a lot of this presentation, most of it from Donna Sakar, who is a friend of mine. And she empowered me to use some of her content to share it forward with you today. You know, we're now like, if Donna can't do an imposter syndrome talk, she'll often ask me, hey, Melissa, can you do this imposter syndrome talk? Because she knows that I've often used a lot of her content, you know, and I don't use it to you know, kind of replace her or to steal it from her. You know, I want to share what she's taught me forward with other people, but I always, you know, credit her, you know, with what she's done to inspire me, you know, and how she's inspired me is to not be like an imposter anymore. You know, Susan's helped me through this, and so has many of you know, Donna's mentors. A lot of famous people, you know, they suffer from imposter syndrome, but you know, it's super, super common. It's more common than you think. Neil Armstrong actually suffers from imposter syndrome, funny enough. He was in this room with a bunch of people who were like Nobel Peace Prize winners. And he was like, wow, these people have all made and created and done amazing things. I just went to where I was sent. Like, imagine that. If this is like the first person to walk on the moon. He felt like an imposter. That's crazy, right? Like, completely crazy. But that's what was going through his mind. By the way, this is supposed to have a picture of Tom Hanks. Actually, Tom Hanks, the actor, is an imposter too. So I'd love to know, how many of you feel like an imposter sometimes? I heard one example. Yeah. Sorry, were you getting ready to stop? So I heard of me. Yep, me too. I was at 021 Disrupt, a entrepreneurship talk that was led by Jihan Ara from the Nest.io, a incubator and accelerator based out of Karachi. And she had me do a talk in front of like 1,500 or 2,000 people. Actually, this is when I was on the stage and doing that talk. And it was interesting. Like in the beginning, like not a lot of people were like raising their hands to say they felt like an imposter. But after we went through the presentation, like most everybody raised their hand and they were like, okay, I admit it. I feel like an imposter sometimes too. And it's not something that just impacts women. It impacts men too, you know, and men are affected by it as well, but they just voice it differently. They experience it differently. So I'm here to tell you, you are not an imposter. You are as good as the people around you. That good thing that happened, whatever it wasn't dumb luck. It wasn't about being at the right place at the right time. You got that opportunity because you earned it, and you deserve a seat at the table. I was recently called out and I was recently called an imposter. You know, I did that presentation in Karachi, and the slides looked like Donna's, and I changed things up a little bit. But in the beginning, the one I said, hey, this presentation was inspired by Donna. This checklist was created by Donna, and Donna's given me her permission to share it forward. And a woman said on Twitter, I think you're an imposter, and I think you stole Donna's content. And I'm like, actually, I didn't. I had Donna's permission and I tagged Donna. And I'm like, Donna and I are actually friends. And she said, yeah, but I think you're a thief. I'm like, okay, well, maybe you didn't see the credits on the page. Go away. So again, we're always going to find that, there are people out there that will bring noise and make us feel like we don't belong. It's your responsibility to forget that noise, even if you're the one creating it. So even whether it's someone else or you creating it, you actually do belong. And no, you're not faking it. So I'm currently impostering my way through IBM. Like, what did I know about, I'm not a developer, by the way. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect. I didn't study computer science, but I talk about digital skills, right? But if you ask me, and let's say, for example, the world was coming to an end, and the only way to, save the world was for me, without any help, to build an application, the world would come to an end. Because I'm not a developer. I've taken no development classes at all, no engineering classes. But I still work in tech, and I still am a developer advocate. So we have to figure out what we're good at, what we're not good at, and be real with what we're really not qualified to do. But a lot of what you feel is imaginary and not reality. So a lot of the things that we think we can't do or we're not qualified to do, it's not always real. It's like this bully that we have in our heads. The next thing that I think about is, first off, when I think about what am I really, really qualified to do, I think about what will I lose out on if I don't do whatever that thing is. And I also think, will others, will you, will me, will I be better off if I don't do it? Should I be afraid to do that thing? No, I shouldn't. And I should get rid of all the butterflies in my stomach and do that thing, whatever that thing is. To do that, I break things down into parts, and I think about which parts specifically am I qualified to do? Because ultimately, there are some things that we're not good at, right? So I think about, individual things. What am I good at? What am I not good at? And I know that I'm qualified to build and scale startups. But you know what? I'm not good at providing technical advice. So I can build and scale startups, but I need someone technical to help me do it. I'm good at empowering communities. But again, I don't know how to develop, so I need to bring someone to help me do that piece of it. I'm a good advocate for the underserved. But you know what? Sometimes I don't know about communities everywhere. And so this is where I can be an advocate, but I need to partner with others who might know a local community better than me. And I'm good at evangelizing digital inclusion. But again, I'm not a developer. So I need to bring someone who has the skills that I don't have. Does that make sense so far? Any questions before I keep going? Okay. So this is where, again, when I talked about those tech skills, which is something I'm weak in, you may be really, really strong in development, but you may not be good at public speaking. So what can you do to, number one, sharpen your skills so you can think about things differently? And or number two, who can you pair up with? Who's better at that than you? So over here in the far left, Matt, he's better at technical skills than me. The two girls from the UAE in the middle, they know more about building communities than they have a community in the UAE. So when I do things with girls in the UAE or women in engineering, I reach out to them. The far right, I was doing a talk on digital skills to get feedback from people, from teachers, actively out in the field teaching digital skills. I had my ideas, but I wanted to gain their insight. So I was presenting that so I could get feedback. How many of you have heard of design thinking before? Anybody know what design thinking is? if we have time, I'll go through what design thinking is, but it's ultimately thinking about how do you see things from the audience's perspective. It was just amazing when you're thinking about storytelling, because you think about their pain points, their wants, their needs, their frustrations, talking to them, talking to your audience, so you can craft better stories. So you can feel like you belong and craft stories that are reflective of your audience. So these are some of my mentors, some of my sponsors. You know, I mentioned Donna, you know, she's amazing again. Start small. You're not going to just conquer the world. So what is it that you can do? So in the essence of building your personal brand, you know, what can you do to write a blog in LinkedIn, for example? Read an article, or even from today's session, what can you do to write an article to showcase what you learned and write about it? When I want to get feedback from others, I often use a little template like, hey, I admire the work that you're doing in blah. I'm doing a small pilot to learn more about blah. I have a question for you. How do you go about blah? Something bite-sized, something somebody can answer in 15 minutes. I don't ask them everything. Hey, I'm thinking about what am I going to study in my career? Can you help? I don't know what you need to study. You got to figure that out for yourself. But hey, I'm thinking about studying computer science or data science. What do you think the different skills are? What different skills do you think are required for those careers? Oh, that's meaningful. That's something I can answer. Do you see the difference between those two? How one is like, I don't know, like how big is a boat? The other one is real, actionable, something I can comment on. So I mentioned this before, but don't compare yourself with others. Compliment them, elevate them, and most importantly, be an and. Be at the best. Be the best at the intersection of your ands. Don't be an or. You know, I'm involved in startup ecosystem. I'm, you know, the head of my program at IBM. It took me a lot of hard work to get there. Thankfully, I'm here. I'm a developer advocate, but I told you I'm not a developer. Interesting, right? So this is a perfect example of how, you know, I thought I could never be a developer advocate because I'm not a developer. And then there you go. My bully inside of my head was telling me, oh, you can never be this because you're not an actual developer. Well, I've got skills that some of my team members don't have. And they've got skills that in many cases I don't have. I'm a speaker, I'm a writer, I'm a CEO, and I'm a founder. I'm an academic. You know, I could add more things into this. So think about what your ands are and be at the intersection. Be the best at the intersection of those things. You know, think about when things are not going right. You know, think about what advice you'd give a friend. You know, maybe even when a friend comes to you for advice, write down the advice that you gave that person. And if something similar happens to you, reflect back on that. Get that notebook out again. Say, oh, what advice did I give my friend? How often do we not follow our own advice? Often, right? Yes. But ultimately, gather your imposter squad. So who are the people who empower you, who inspire you, who are your cheerleaders, who are good examples for you? Not the haters, not the people who try to convince us that you should do one thing instead of the other. You know, who are the people who inspire you now and empower you and don't discourage you? You know, the negative people we have in our life, limit the amount of information that you share with them, you know? You know, I think someone shared something really insightful around, you know, never compare your chapter 5 with someone else's chapter 20. You know, somebody might have been working, you know, just now you're kind of looking at this saying, wow, Melissa's doing all these things. Yeah, I've been working on it for 10 years. I've been working on it for 5 years. Don't expect that tomorrow you're all of a sudden going to be where you need to be. You may even surpass me, you know. Sometimes you win. I don't like saying you fail because if you learned, you learned. But document it. Talk about a failure you've had. Again, incorporate your vulnerability. Don't be scared. Don't be scared to share when something didn't go right. But ultimately do the thing, whatever that thing is. don't allow yourself to be scared, don't allow yourself to think that you're not good enough or that you don't deserve a seat at the table, because you do. This is a book that my friend Donna wrote. I don't know if you can gain access to it in Pakistan, because I know sometimes what you can gain access to there is a little bit different than what I might be able to gain access to in the US. But if you cannot get access to this, you can definitely get access to some of her TED Talks. If you just Google Donna Sakar, you'll find a lot of really cool stuff. She's on Twitter as well. She's amazing. So as I mentioned, to carry on in the conversation, you can find me at Mentor Africa with a K. And what do you feel that you all learned from today? Anything interesting that you'd like to share that you learned? Or something that you're going to change doing? And you can message it to me privately. It's okay. Anyone want to share anything? Yeah, so one example might be comparing yourself with others, believing in yourself, and to keep going. Not being an or, being an and. I'm building your own persona, and I'm not saying it should be a different persona than who you are. Figure out what are those 3 things you want to be known for. What is that one thing you want to be known for? I want people to feel like they can approach me. I want people to feel like they can relate to me. I want people to feel like I can inspire them and empower them, and that we all play a role in going out and making the world a more inclusive place. So I'd like you all to vote. We have about, I don't know, less than 30 minutes left. We can either jump in and do a talk on purpose-driven careers. So how do you bring purpose and passion into your career? Or we can talk about what is design thinking. So I'd love to know, what are the 3 things, or which one would you rather do? Design thinking in the next 20 minutes, or how do you bring purpose and passion into your career? Okay, so far I think it's purpose and passion. So give me a second, let me find my presentation. All right, cool. So let me get this, start to share. And can you make sure that I'm only showing 1 slide instead of 2? So in the chat window, if you could let me know, that would be awesome.
It's just 1.
Okay, good. All right, so we're going to talk about purpose-driven careers, and this is how your super secret, sauce to landing a purpose-driven career. Because as I mentioned, it's possible to do well, meaning have a salary, and also make the world a better place. So first step is to define your vision. And again, we talked about being an and not an or. So you can be many things at the same time. You don't have to choose one exactly. You can be at the intersection of all of those things. How do they come together? And we talked about one passion, which is mental health, maybe destigmatizing mental health and enabling people to gain access to care. Does anyone else have a passion that, something that they're passionate about that you'd like to share? We talked about my passions. All right. Do you have a purpose? Some of us might. Some of us might not. This is where I went to identify what my passions are. So this is, these are the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And think about, when you think about doing good, read each of these 17. I'm going to give you a few minutes to read each of these 17. And I want you to think about which one or which ones resonate with you. And share them with me in the chat. For me, quality education, gender equality, and decent work and economic growth. Maybe a little bit reduced inequalities as well, which, all of these are all about no poverty. So for some of you, it might be no poverty, zero hunger, and decent work and economic growth. For others, it might be number 3, good health and well-being, gender equality, climate action. Yeah. So this is a good place to go. You can find us at globalgoals.org. I'll type it in the chat window. There you go. So for digital skills, you'll find digital skills in quality education. You'll find it in number 4, number 9, number 8, number 10, but mostly in number 4. So first thing we talked about finding your vision, finding what it is you're setting your vision, figuring out what it is, where do you want to go? What is your purpose? What is your passion? And then figure out what are your gaps that will enable you to go from, what your passion is to, go out and learn about that topic as much as you can. Find people who are actively working on those issues, whether it's volunteering or in their professional capacity. Be willing to invest and know that you're going to have to work hard to establish a purpose-driven career. It doesn't just come to you. You're going to have to give yourself space and time. It doesn't just happen. Like, I didn't get to where I am now because I waited for that right thing to happen. It took time. Sometimes I have to practice mindfulness. I don't know how many of you practice mindfulness. If you Google mindfulness, you'll find a lot of really interesting articles on what it means to be mindful. I would encourage you to do that. It really helps you to kind of find the space and time that you need, and also gives you like the space that you need to prioritize and organize. You're not going to be able to achieve everything at once. So how can you prioritize your learning? How can you prioritize your vision and goals? And how can you get yourself organized to make sure that you can go after and do what you want to do? But ultimately create a plan to fill those gaps. Own your path, own your plan. Set up a timeline, set up specific goals. Maybe take some baby steps. You might not get there right away. So often when I am traveling the world or spending time in different parts of the world, I'm not just working, in the day. It takes time. And I know that we all have different obligations in life where, family or other things might force us to only have a certain amount of time available. Take on stretch assignments. You know, if you are working now, what can you do to take on a stretch assignment that will enable you to incorporate some of your purpose or passion? Volunteer with a startup or a nonprofit. You know, if there's a certain topic you like, what are some nonprofits out there that are doing that work? Reach out to them. Hey, I've got some skills in this. You know, I'm really good at project management. I'm really good at program management. I'm a developer. Can I help you in some way? Like we said in the imposter syndrome section, gather your squad. That's the same thing that I mentioned in personal branding. You know, get your positive influences. I cannot stress enough how important it is to be with your squad. And your squad are the people who are empowering you, inspiring you. They're not your haters. They're not the people who make you feel bad or get you down or make you think you can't achieve something. That's not your squad. And unfortunately, sometimes you might not include your family in your squad. Sometimes our families are just not always the biggest supporters of us. And a squad, and if you don't have a squad, create a squad. Figure out who is it who empowers you. And it could be that you create an online squad. It could be, you know, if you think about, you know, your virtual quote unquote friends. And you may not even have a big squad. It might be one person. And I sometimes don't share certain things with certain members of my family. And the reason being is they're haters. And they make me feel bad or down, or why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you do that? Or, oh, I remember blah, 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 blah. Or why haven't you done this? Or shouldn't you be doing that? You know? So I always choose carefully who I share what with and why. So that, and I don't lie, but there are certain cases where I realize you don't need to know everything I'm working on or doing because you're a hater and you're going to make me feel bad. So seek bite-sized insights from your squad. As I mentioned earlier, who are people actively doing what you're doing? And if you don't know anyone actively doing what you're doing, do some research. Find out what are the startups and nonprofits in your community. Can you email someone? Can you reach out to them through a friend of a friend of a friend, an old professor, a current professor? But reciprocate, you know, be helpful, be a friend. You know, you want to move into a certain part of your, you know, in your life. There are other people who want to make moves as well. Figure out how you can help them make their moves. So we talked about building a personal brand, you know, document your journey, be present online and offline, but most importantly, be inclusive. You know, sometimes the people who we think would not be the ones who can guide us the most, in some cases, are the people who can guide us the most. Again, I'm not talking about the haters. So we don't need the haters, but ultimately do the thing, you know, whatever that thing is. When I worked at Microsoft, I stepped in front of the CEO of Microsoft, Satya Nadella. I stepped in front of him to share an idea with him. You know what that led to? That led to me winning with my team. First place in the Inspired Me category out of 4,000 teams worldwide, and it led to creating a device-giving movement inside of IBM or inside of Microsoft when I was there. And I changed many, many, many things about what was happening at Microsoft, but I was a hidden figure. You'll never hear me written about by Microsoft in any of the articles that they write about when it comes to device giving. You'll hear others write about it, but in reality, I'm the one who created it. And that particular circumstance is what inspired me to think more about my personal brand, because I realized that I was a hidden figure, and I'd been a hidden figure in many times in my life, and I wasn't going to allow myself to be a hidden figure anymore, that I deserved a seat at the table, and I deserved an opportunity for people to know that I'm the one who created this thing. It wasn't someone else. And if you don't step up and own your creation, trust me, somebody else will. So thank you. This was the purpose-driven career component of the talk. We've got about 15 minutes left. I'd like to just maybe put on my camera and, you know, figure out if anyone has any questions. I'm happy to end the session early, but I'd love to know if anyone has any questions for me. It's an opportunity to ask me anything.
Ma'am, where is your puppy today?
Sorry.
I said, where is your puppy today?
Where's my puppy?
Yes.
Hold on, Frida, come. Come. There's Frida.
She's so cute.
Her name is Frida. That's Frida.
Sorry, what's her name?
Frida. I'll type it in the chat window. Hold on.
Frida?
Yeah, Frida. Frida. How was today? If you attended the other one, was it a bit repetitive because you heard 2 of the things before? All right, any questions, or I'll give you some time back in your day. Okay, cool, awesome. Thank you, everyone. All right, Circle Women, do you want to say some words at the end?
Yes, so thank you so much, Melissa, for the workshop. I actually learned a lot myself also, and I think everybody learned a lot here, and it was actually really helpful. I actually suffer from the imposter syndrome myself also, so it was actually very nice, and your dog is really cute. Thanks a lot. And
Well, hopefully
for
this will
everyone
help you
else,
feel. Hopefully this will help you feel like you shouldn't be an imposter, because really it's all up here, you know. And I always remember these slides whenever I try to feel like an imposter, or when I feel like an imposter, you know.
yeah. So I have attached the link of the feedback form in the chat bar. So everyone, please fill it if you need the slides or the recording of today's session.
Awesome, good. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for allowing me to skydive into your lives, and thank you for allowing me to share my skills forward with you. Remember that you have now an important duty of who can you share your skills forward, you know, who can you share your skills with? So now you've got some skills. Hopefully you learned a thing or two, and hopefully you'll implement those things and, you know, share them with a, you know, a friend, a family member, you know, whatever you learned. So, all right, excellent. Take care, everyone. Any last questions before I go? All right, good.
I would also like to thank our sponsor for today, FNFF, the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, which aims to contribute to the enhancement of soft skills in the fields of entrepreneurship, business management, strategic communication, business leadership, and responsible citizenship. So yes, thanks a lot for everyone for joining in. And yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.